everything in this industry is uncertain. There's no guarantees at all. You can do your best to line everything up perfectly and properly and dot all the T's and cross all the I's, but there's still that risk of what if something happens that you didn't plan for. I don't think it works for anybody to do direct to streaming anymore unless the streamer is paying for the production budget. But if your goal is, I'm going to raise $1 million and go direct to Netflix, direct to Amazon, direct to Apple TV or Hulu or whatever, I just don't think the economics are there. I might as well put it up for free on YouTube and run ads on it. Studios are going, how can we reach as many people as possible? And my mandate for the marketing team is, how do we reach the right people deeply and often? How do we get resonance over reach?
Welcome back to the podcast, Daren Smith.
Thanks so much for having me. I have been looking forward to this since we set it up. I'm so glad that there were people who wanted to hear more from me because, as you know, I like to talk. So I'm excited to dive into some questions today.
Yeah, it was a great episode. For anyone who missed it, it was episode 34. Daren came on. He's an independent producer based in Utah, and he's currently raising a $10 million film fund with the goal of producing 10 profitable blockbuster indies. It was such a good episode, and so much has happened for you since then. It's only been a couple of months, but I'd just love to start with an update of what's been going on with the fund.
Yeah, I've been very busy the last 2 months or so. In October, I was doing a bunch of events, and I went to 3 different film festivals back to back to back. So I went to Newport Beach and AFI Fest and then Austin Film Fest. I was in New York in October and again in November. And so all of that was around fundraising. It was around who can I meet in the different cities where I'm at, to be in the place where the people are, to have the conversations. And so I set up a bunch of what I'm calling investor salons, which are conversation-based lunches as opposed to a networking event. It's more of a, let's talk about the future of indie film finance. And those were really successful, and I connected with a lot of really great people, executives and investors and filmmakers alike. And the big update really is that we crossed our first big milestone for Producer Fund 1. We crossed the $1 million of committed capital, and we greenlit our first project. The project's called Brotherhood, a cinematic musical. It's a movie that is written and directed by Ross Booth, a friend of mine. And we're very excited. We've been actively promoting and developing. We're already marketing the movie. We're aiming for like an April, May production date and releasing it in September, October next year. So very excited to have a project in production or in development at this point.
Yeah, it's so great. From my point of view, I've been watching your social media since we spoke, and just seeing already you've got newsletters, you've got social accounts specifically for the film. I saw you'd released some composer versions of the songs on Spotify, which I listened to. So it's all out there in public for people to follow your journey.
Yeah, I mean, we could spend a whole podcast talking about just that idea of start marketing day one. Like when you announce the thing, have some campaign stuff ready to go. Like we had a newsletter ready to go. It's my existing email list that I'm using the software, and I just added on Ross as a writer. And, you know, he's been doing a really good job as well of promoting the project. And so it was really his idea to go and be kind of music first and go and record some composer sessions. So some demos like piano vocal, but produced, well-recorded versions. Those are on Apple Music, Spotify, wherever you listen to your music. And it's really about seeding the music and some of the message that the film's trying to promote, and getting people to be aware that this movie exists. That's the hardest thing, I think, for filmmakers. We know how to make the movie, but how do we get people to show up and buy tickets and want to watch it? Well, start as early as possible, because when you start early, it's free. When you start late, it costs a lot of money.
Yeah, absolutely. So where are you seeing your role in this at the moment? I know you see yourself as a fund manager who's managing the fund and managing all 10 projects as they begin. But it seems like you're quite involved in, going to sessions, promoting the film, inviting people to previews. So are you in a kind of hybrid producer fund manager role at the moment?
Yeah, that's a good way to think about it, is a hybrid. Until we have a production company and a producer that I can hand off the day-to-day to, I like a lot of the early developmental producer stuff. And so I'm more than happy to take on that as part of my role as a managing a fund, a general partner in a fund. In a typical VC fund, you'll have people to do due diligence, you'll have people to do paperwork and all the legal and all the stuff. And it's just me. And I've got one guy who's helping me with the fund administration stuff, all the legal and the paperwork and making sure money goes where it's supposed to go at the right time. And so it's like, okay, well, I have bandwidth right now because we have one project that we've greenlit. I don't have three going at the moment, which is what we're working towards, is to have three movies kind of in motion at any given time. So I've got the bandwidth to, handle the initial cast offers and, the deal memos for the first, five key creative people and the director, and making sure that money gets put into an account and forming the entity and all those kind of things. I enjoy that starting stuff. Once we get to where there's 100 people or 50 people, that's where it's like I don't have bandwidth for that, because I need to be hyper focused. Like, the number one priority if you're going to raise money from investors is to get those investors their money back. That's your number one priority. And so right now, this is supporting that priority. But as soon as we get closer to pre-production, that's where I need to really hand off the day-to-day and make sure that I'm, have a fiduciary responsibility or a financial responsibility that has to come first.
Yeah. And I think even the way you're developing that fund is really smart. As you said, being in the room where the people are, but you created those rooms. Like, those events didn't exist before you went out there and said, hey, let's create a session where we're talking about investment. Come and talk about the future of investment in indie film. You got all those people in the room, and then you're almost one of the experts and you get to position yourself. I know this is deliberate, but I'd love to hear you talk more about that strategy.
Yeah, you caught that. Okay. So I'm going to preface this with, and I may have said it last time, so I'm sorry if I'm being redundant, but people look at me at where I'm at now, and I'm not like super successful. Like, I've made a couple of movies and I've raised a little bit of money. But some people look at where I'm at and the stuff I'm about to say in the rest of this conversation today as like, well, he has that, so it doesn't apply to me. And I just need everybody to rewind to a year ago where I had like 1,500 followers on LinkedIn and no presence there. I had no investor network. I had none of it. And it was just a factor of, I decided that what I'm going to do for the next year is raise money. And so that was a hard conversation with my spouse to say, hey, babe, I'm going to raise money and put a fund together. And I don't know how long it's going to take, but that doesn't pay very well. So I'm not going to be like a contributing member of society in this family for the next however long. And the original conversation was 3 months. And then she was like, well, I know it's going to take longer than that. So then it was 6 months and 8 months. And it took really almost a year to get to that first milestone of $1 million, where I could actually like collect a paycheck for the first time this year, right? I did a little consulting and I hosted a retreat. And I had some income throughout the year, but not anything compared to what I was making before. So yes, I may come across as like I'm in a privileged position, but I can guarantee you go back to a year ago and you look at the revenue that I've had personally this year, and it's not very privileged. So that's all just, baseline. Let's go from there. So yes, being in the rooms where people are is a very important principle. And if you're not getting invited to those rooms, then the next best thing is to create the rooms. And so, yes, it helps that I have a LinkedIn presence. I've got like 8,000 or 9,000 followers or something on there. And the bulk of the 8,000 or 9,000 that showed up in the last year are filmmakers, investors, media executives, et cetera. I've been hyper focused on who I'm connecting with so that I build a network on LinkedIn of people that I can help with what I'm doing, who can help me with what they're doing. And so in the process of spending a year doing that and having connections all over the world, I could go, okay, well, I could filter in and do a quick search of who's in Newport Beach, who's in the LA area, who's in Austin. And in every one of those areas, I had a few hundred people. And so I would just go in and narrow down, and then I would, copy paste the same invite. Hey, I'm hosting an investor salon lunch while I'm in town for this festival, and I would love to save you a seat at the table. We're going to talk about the future of indie film finance, and there's going to be a bunch of investors and executives there, and would love to have you. It worked because I think I have enough of a profile on LinkedIn to where people go, oh, this guy's legit. And it helps that, it's an investor salon talking about the future of indie finance at a cool restaurant. Like, yeah, all of that was manufactured, but you can call things whatever you want. And so I did, and I structured it a little bit, but it wasn't hard. Anyone can do it, is what I'm trying to say. And it didn't cost a bunch either. I paid for my lunch, and I told everybody we're all covering our own meal in the invite. So it didn't cost me $300 or $1,000 every time I did one. It was $20. So yeah, I'm going to go to lunch anyway. Might as well do it with 10 people that we could help each other. So that's how those kind of came about.
Such a smart strategy. Well, we've got a lot of questions from people that have come in after listening to your episode. So the primary questions that came in were really around financing. How does the detail of what you're proposing in the fund works? So as a starting point, would you be able to break down your overall finance plan for an individual $1 million production in more detail? How much of that $1 million is coming directly from the fund and the investors, and is there money from other sources or incentives as well?
Awesome. Yes, happy to answer that one. So the goal with each investment that we make from the fund is that it's $1 million equity investment, and that represents somewhere between 40 to 50% or 40 to 60% of the total budget that we're going to spend on the movie. And so one of the things I'm trying to fix is that I don't think it's smart for movies to be funded 100% with equity. And granted, I know that's a privileged thing to say, but like, yes, if you're doing $100,000, $200,000 movie, great. Like, you're probably going to have to go and finance it 100% with equity. But I think once you're above $1 million, it really is smart for you and really nice to your investors to make it so that that only represents around as close to half of the budget as possible. So if we're putting in $1 million, my goal is to bring in somewhere between 500K to another $1 million from other sources. So you're talking tax incentives and credits. You're talking sponsors, so brands that are going to, give you some money to put their brand, their products and services and whatever in your movie. So you've got cars and drinks and laptops and phones and all those things. You can go and talk to companies and have them give you money to put their stuff in your movie. You've got donors, you've got grants, you've got pre-sales and minimum guarantees. Like, all of those things count towards kind of the soft money bucket for the project. The other thing that we do with every movie, we make sure we set aside 10% or really $100,000 for development. And I require 6 months of development for every movie. Because one of the things that we do that I don't think is good in indie film is we get the money on Friday and we're in pre-production on Monday. And there's zero development because we're so eager to get paid that we have to go right into pre-production just so we can start paying ourselves. I get it. Like, I've done 4 movies that way. So I'm not saying I haven't done it, but I think there's a problem there in that we're underdeveloping or not developing at all the script. So we've got a second or third draft that is good enough and we're going to go make it. And, on the movie, the Brotherhood that we're doing right now, I think it's draft 14 or 15, and we're still 4 or 5 months out from production. And there will probably be 2 or 3 more, not major rewrites, but, noticeable tweaks to the script and the story as we go forward. So out of that $1 million, 100,000 of it is set aside for development. Part of that development money we're setting aside for our marketing team. So I brought on 4 people already to start marketing the movie day one, and they are actively doing that. And so that's part of the marketing budget, but initially it was part of the development budget. So we set aside ideally 500K for marketing, and we start day one, and we need that budget so that we can have enough people know that our movie exists. Because like I was saying earlier, if you wait, it costs a lot more. You have to blast and spend a lot in ads in order to get people to know your movie's coming out. Whereas if you start on day one, you could build up a list of 1,000, 10,000, 100,000, who knows how many people that are then your ambassadors to say, great, you know about our movie, bring your family, bring your friends, bring your church, bring your community to come see the movie and tell people about it. And guess what? If you have 100,000 people who are each connected to 10 people, that's $1 million. If they are connected to 100 people, that's 10 million. Like, at some point, you reach kind of a critical mass where you can be profitable. So really, $1.5 million production budget is really a $2 million spend over the course of a year. That's everything from marketing and development and production, but it also includes all the soft money that I talked about.
And Do you have a sense of what that number is of people that you need to have aware of your film in order to hit the box office numbers that you need, like the actual bums on
Mm.
seats and ticket purchases?
Yeah, it depends on how you count awareness. So, on our last movie, we spent a few $100,000 on marketing. I was tracking very closely the spend and the impressions because that was the data that they kept feeding back to us. Oh, we got it on MSN.com and that's 100 million impressions. No, it's not. Like 4 people saw our page on that thing and you're counting 100 million impressions. I'm sorry, but no, we did not get 100 million impressions on our movie. And by the way, you didn't include a link to go get tickets in the article, so it doesn't even count. They can't even do anything. So if you're counting impressions as awareness, I think it requires a billion, like 500 million. Like, I don't know. It requires an astronomical number of people who have had an impression where they visited a page where your movie was briefly mentioned on a part of the site that they didn't even scroll down to. Like, that, it just doesn't count. So when I talk about awareness, Daniel Priestley is a friend who's written about this a lot, and he's kind of my mentor when it comes to thinking this way. But there was a lot of research done by Google and by other companies that talked about this. He calls it the 7-11 4, which is people need to spend 7 hours of time with you over 4 different platforms and 11 different touches. That to me is how you get to a point where someone could actually consider buying something from you. And so that's our target. And with our marketing, we're doing long form stuff. We're doing podcasts, we're doing video, we're doing social media content, we're doing it all. But if you think someone's going to spend 7 hours with you by seeing Facebook ads the 2 weeks before your movie comes out, that's not going to happen. You can't physically spend that much time with an ad. So we're starting really early so we can hit that 7-11-4 with ideally 100,000 people. That's the target I've given to our marketing team. Like, I'd like to see 100,000 people combined between all the different social platforms and the email list. If we can get to 10,000 on an email list, I think every one of those represents 100 people between their social and their friend groups. So, that's 1 million people. If we can get 1 million people to buy a ticket to a thing, that's 10 million in the box office. That's very, very successful for a movie like ours. So somewhere in that 100,000 to 1 million people that are not just aware, but are engaged, are aware on multiple times and multiple platforms and multiple touches.
So what's that compared to the population of the US? I'm just trying to do the maths in my head.
Whatever 1 million out of 350 million is. I don't
Yeah,
know. I
so
don't do public math.
less than 1%.
Yes.
Less than 0.5% of the population is kind of what you're going for.
0.002. So I think that's 0.2% or something like that. Very small number. And it's, I don't know, like a quick aside, I don't think we should think of it as the same way as studios do, right? Studios are going, how can we reach as many people as possible? And my mandate for the marketing team is how do we reach the right people deeply and often? How do we get resonance over reach? And so I don't really care what the number is. I care that we have a system in place that generates resonance with people to where they enroll themselves. They go, oh my gosh, I saw the music on Instagram and then I clicked on a link and it took me to an email page. I did that so I can get access to the script or the recording session or the next live session or whatever. And now I'm part of the community. And a community of 10,000 to me is worth more than 1 billion impressions on social media or ads.
And how are you thinking about existing communities or existing awareness? Because I'm sure there's a lot of people who have spent their 7-11-4 time with you personally and might see one trailer and go, oh, that's Daren's film. I'm going to go and see that because I like and trust Daren. So are you building out your casting and, I don't know, other community interactions in order to do that?
Definitely. With this movie specifically, there's a lot of community engagement possible. It's a story about a white American family and a next door immigrant family from Mexico that are learning what does it truly mean to love thy neighbor as thyself in 2025 America. And if you're in Australia, you've probably just seen the worst highlights of everything that was going on this summer and with our friends and family and our neighbors that are being targeted for whatever reason. I'm not trying to get political here, but that's what's happening and that's what the story's about. And so being able to do outreach now to organizations that are helping with immigration reform and helping people go through the process, which is a very hard and arduous and long process to get citizenship, those are easy connections to make. Us going to them and saying, hey, we're making a movie about this. They go, oh my gosh, how can we help? Because any awareness about the situation is going to help them and vice versa. And so we're already thinking about those communities, how we tap into organizations and community organizations and churches and all these different things. But from a personal brand standpoint, it's also something that's top of mind. I don't expect to ever be, Dwayne The Rock Johnson and have 100 million followers or whatever he has on Instagram. But you can also see that it didn't really help him that much with the Smashing Machine. It didn't make that much money. Conversely, Taylor Swift has 300. She has a population of the United States as her following, I think. And she was able to get 3 million people to go see a movie in a weekend. So there is some leverage to be had if you have a really strong personal brand. So I think about that a lot. And I think about, okay, well, my network is more about leverage than about reach. So who can I contact or connect with or have a relationship with there that goes, oh, I'm going to take my whole company to see this movie, or I'm going to take my whole church to see this movie. And, who are the production partners and distribution partners and international sales partners that I can leverage to help us with getting the movie out there. So I think of my platform not so much about how can I get the most number of people, but how can I get more of the right people that I can leverage to where one connection leads to 100 or 1,000 or 10,000 on the other end.
Mm. So going back to financing, we have $1 million, which is around 50% of your budget, ideally. The other 50% is coming from soft sources. Is there any chance that you might come to Australia and, take advantage of our tax incentive for feature films? Would you ever look at films outside of the US?
100%. I mean, we filmed The Carpenter in Cape Town, South Africa, and they have a 35% tax incentive there, which we qualified for and got back within about 6 months, and it was amazing. I love that process. I love working overseas. And it's hard to ask that of a director or actors or whatever it might be. Like, I enjoy it, but I'm at the point now where, like, I'm not going to do it again unless I can bring my family along with me. Like, being gone in Cape Town, South Africa for 8 weeks on the other side of the world where our time zones didn't line up very well and it was hard to even have the same time to talk to my family, let alone, spend meaningful time with them for 2 months. That was really hard. To me, that's the hard part. It's not the financial or the production partners or anything like that that's hard. It's how do you make it work with the family life? So even for this movie Brotherhood, we're filming in Utah. We probably could have gone to Texas because it maybe makes more sense to film there visually, but neither of us wanted to be away from our family for 6 or 8 weeks. And the incentive there wasn't as strong as Utah at our budget level. So it's like, well, let's do it in Utah. We'll make it work. So long answer to your very easy question, which is yes, I would absolutely. Like, I'd love to film in New Zealand. I'd love to film in Australia. I'd love to film in all over Canada, London. Like, I'd love to have Fund One be an international affair. But for now, I think most of them are probably taking place in the States. But I do have slots available in the fund for people that are, especially producers that are bringing money to the table. So I've had conversations with people in Canada, people in Australia to say, hey, we've got this movie, we've got a little bit committed. Do you want to come in for some? And I'm like, that's not our model. We don't just contribute, finishing funds or last money in. We own the projects. And they're like, well, that's not what we want to do. But if there are people listening to this who have a project that aligns with what we're trying to do, which is family-friendly, values-based films, the kind of things that spark conversation and change people for the better, then yeah, shoot me a DM and send me a pitch.
The other question around finance has been around the back end and profitability. So what does that look like in terms of theatrical, home entertainment, streaming? How are you making that return for your investors?
I mean, it starts with the financing piece. How are you structuring it, and are you limiting the budget? Like, $1.5 million is not a lot of money to make a movie, and a lot of producers need bigger budgets in order to pay for their lifestyle, right? Like, if you're going to get 2 to 4% of a budget as your fee, as a typical producer fee, well, that's not that much. And you need to be doing 2, 3, 4 movies a year, maybe 5 or 6 movies a year to afford your lifestyle. And that's part of the reason budgets get inflated, because producers need to get paid. So part of it is the financing piece. But the other thing that I did before I even started promoting and pitching the fund was lining up a service provider that can help with theatrical distribution and international sales partners. And so, I mean, the digital version, like the direct to consumer and the digital stuff, you can really handle on your own. I don't think you need to pay someone to do that for you. You can get onto a website and do your own release. You can put it on Amazon and put it on all the streaming platforms yourself. But for me, that's like a year after the theatrical release. It's not 2 days later, like you want to really give as much time to each window as you can and exploit it fully. But having those partners up front and knowing that I can put a movie in 400 screens, knowing that I can sell it to 20 territories, like those things matter when it comes to the profitability equation. So I spent a lot of time lining those up before I started raising money for the fund. And I think a lot of indie filmmakers think that the distribution comes after the movie is made. And I think that's the wrong way to look at it. So there are hundreds of distributors. I mean, look, we just had AFM, and how many people were there? 300 different companies or something like that. So there's 300 that you could talk to. Maybe only 100 of them are the right budget or size or whatever. Maybe it's 20. But hey, there's 20 companies that you can go talk to today, and you only need one to say yes. So don't do it at AFM. This is a side message for everybody, but like I think AFM's the worst time and place to pitch, international sales agents. I'd rather call them 2 months before, say, hey, I'm Daren, I'm in need for a producer, and I got 10 movies coming down the line that are $1 to $2 million budgets, family friendly, values based. If that's something you're interested in, I'd love to have a conversation with you about working with you as an international sales partner. Great. We would love to have that conversation because you sound like someone who knows what they're talking about. When you knock on a door at AFM and you go, please give me money for my movie, they're like, go away. So I just think it's the wrong time and place to try to have that conversation. So keeping the budget low and then having a plan for distribution before you go into production, I think those two equal success on the back end. But we'll see. We haven't done it yet with this model. Within a year, we will have an actual example and we'll tell you how much we made.
Sounds great. A couple of the questions were around that distribution piece. So obviously you're the person at the moment who is curating these concepts and scripts and promising this distributor that you're going to have something of theatrical quality that audiences are going to want to come and see. How are you making that promise to them, and how are they buying that promise from you?
Well, I couldn't have done it on my first movie, that's for sure. That's not a conversation I was trying to have on movie number one. I did 4 movies, and out of those 4, 3 of them had theatrical releases. So I think the track record is how you answer that question. You say, these are the types of movies I make. I mean, I'm a little over the place genre-wise, but I've kind of focused in on these are going to be family-friendly, values-based films, so people understand what that is, in the $1 to $2 million budget range, so they understand what that is. I didn't make a $30,000 movie and then a $200,000 movie and then a $400,000 that are all different genres and stuff. I didn't do that. So being able to say all my movies are in the $750,000 to $2 million range, and they're all good. They've all been, theatrical qualifiers. Like the track record is the answer to that. Because now that I'm saying I'm going to make 10 movies, I'm going to go raise money. Do you want to be the distributor of 10 good movies? Everybody's like, yeah, I would love to do that. Thank you.
Yeah, and I guess I'm curious about how the distributor-exhibitor relationship works in the US compared to Australia. We're a much smaller market. We only have a handful of distributors working really within the country. And then the screen space and the competition for, screen time at cinemas is really competitive, and we often see smaller budget Australian films disappearing from cinemas after 1 or 2 weeks because they just don't hit the numbers. Is that the same situation in the US, and how does that play into the model?
Yeah, my guess is the ratio between supply and demand is probably pretty similar. If you've got 100 movies coming out in Australia, you got 1,000 movies coming out in US or whatever the number is. Everything is supply and demand. There's a movie made by some people I know that was released on 2,100 screens, and that was too many screens. And it's not just my opinion. Like, it made I don't know, $2 or $3 million opening weekend on 2,100 screens. So it's like, oh, 20 people or 10 people per screen saw it in that weekend. That's not enough because every screen has 100 or 150 seats and you're showing it 10 times in a weekend and you had 10 people see it. Maybe that's one per screening. Like, that's not good. You oversupplied the marketplace. And if an indie film is doing that, that's a fast way to be in the bottom one or two films at that theater. And the way that theaters work, they're like, look, we've got 4 screens and every week the lowest performing one gets swapped out for a new movie. And it's the same thing whether it's an 8-plex, a 16-plex, a 24-plex. The bottom 2, 3, 5, whatever movies that performance-wise, revenue-wise, are going to get kicked out. And if you've only been in theaters for one weekend, but you made $200 per screen, you're gone. But if you made $2,500 per screen, you're going to stick around until you are trickling down to where you're making $500 per screen or less in a week. So it's a pure revenue thing. It's just understanding the science, the math of the marketplace. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's just a movie theater doing the best that they can to stay alive and to make money for themselves. They're kind of agnostic as to what movies they put in. Honestly, they're strong-armed a lot of the time with putting certain movies in from the big studios because they have that leverage. But, you know, they might love your movie and want to have it in their theater. But if it made $50 and the next Marvel or the next Star Wars or the next Disney movie's coming out and it's going to make $4,000 for them, you're gone. So it's just understanding the economics of the marketplace.
This episode of We Interrupt This Broadcast is sponsored by AFTRS, the Australian Film, Television and Radio School. For more than 50 years, AFTRS has been working with our industry, always delivering incredible education and training to our Australian storytellers. So if you're looking for a full-time course or a short course, if you want to be on campus or online, anywhere in Australia, AFTRS has a course that's going to suit you.
Does this model require a cinema release or could it work with a direct-to-streamer proposition?
My model is really built on theatrical first. So every movie is financed and structured and designed to be a theatrical release. That's exciting for everybody involved. It's exciting for the investors. It's exciting for the filmmakers, exciting for the distributors, exciting for the audience. And so we're serving people by saying these are theatrical films. And I don't think it works with a direct-to-streaming model because streaming pays, 8 cents per stream or per hour streamed or whatever it is. Like if you look at Netflix and Amazon, they're paying cents for every stream. It's complete devaluation of this art that we've created, right? Like even the idea of selling a $10 ticket to see it is like, man, I wish we could sell $150 tickets like Broadway. Like that would be awesome. I would figure out how to do that. And I kind of am figuring out how to do that. How do you get people to pay $100 to see something associated with your movie? We can talk about that next year after I've done it. But, you know, $10 for something that costs a few million or $100 million or $250 million make, you can watch it for $10. Like that's insanity, right? But that's the marketplace. That's what we do. And so, I mean, they make more off of a sweatshirt with Lilo and Stitch on it than they do off a movie ticket. So it makes sense that Disney is so merch heavy and so amusement park heavy because they make more money from selling their IP there than in a movie theater where they're splitting 50% with the theater before they even make a dime. So, gosh, it's I don't think it works for anybody to do direct to streaming anymore unless the streamer is paying for the production budget. That's when I think it works. But if your goal is I'm going to raise $1 million and go direct to Netflix, direct to Amazon, direct to Apple TV or Hulu or whatever, I just don't think the economics are there based on how many people need to see it for you to make $1 million. You have to have 8 billion people see it or some crazy stupid number. And you're not going to do that on an indie film that no one's heard of and has no marketing budget. If you go straight to streamer, all you're doing is supplying them an IP, an asset that lives on their digital library shelf to fill their digital library shelf. Like you're just giving them all of the upside. You have no relationship with the purchaser, the customer, your supplier. of a commodity at that point. You're not that you're not making art, but like they're not treating it that way. They're certainly not valuing it that way. So no, I don't think my model works. I know my model doesn't work if it's only streaming. I really don't like what the streamers have done to the economics of the industry. And so it's hard for me to support the idea of like, yeah, I'm going to put my movies on Netflix. Like, I don't think I will unless Netflix comes to me. And I mean, they're going to be able to quote me on this because now it's going to be live on the internet. But like, they can come to me and they can offer me a licensing deal. They can say, we'll give you $100,000, $500,000, $1 million, $10 million, whatever, for your movie, for your library, for whatever. That's an economic decision I can make. But begging Netflix or Amazon or Apple TV to put my movie on their platform and pay me 8 cents per stream, I might as well put it up for free on YouTube and run ads on it, because at least I'm going to make 5 cents per stream there. The economics are the same as free stuff on YouTube. Why? That's not an economic model or a finance plan that works for indie film, in my opinion.
Have you thought about that long tail and how you'll release eventually? Are you going to have your own platform where you can release to audiences for a fee, or as a collective of your films, for example?
I don't see myself, and I'll see if I quote myself a few years from now, but I don't like the streaming product, because as soon as you say I have a streaming platform, you're not selling movies anymore, you're selling a subscription. And that's what Angel Studios is doing, and that's what Netflix is doing. That's what every studio did when they pivoted and tried to catch up with Netflix. That's why we have all the different plus flavors of, streaming. Paramount Plus and Peacock and CBS and all the different things that are now streaming subscription products. They're not selling TV. They're not selling movies. They're selling subscriptions. And I don't want to sell a subscription to my audience because I don't want to run a company that sells subscriptions. That's not what I want to do. I want to make movies. And so if we're going to value the art that we're creating, and I do see it as art, if we're going to value the stories that we're putting out into the world, this is a little bit of an idealistic view, but, I'm entitled to it. It's just me. Then I want to value the stuff we make. So I do see a world where we always have the ability to go direct to consumer with our rentals and purchases. But that's the flavors that you can watch our movie. You can rent it or buy it. We're not going to create our own Angel platform or anything like that, or Wonder Project, that's on Amazon Prime. If they want it, they can come to us with a really good offer. But we'll just sell it direct to our customers. The one thing that always saddens me when I see indie films that were made that were good and it was 10 years ago, and you try to find a movie and you can't find it anywhere online. It's not even on Amazon Prime to rent or Apple TV to rent. And you're like, guys, get onto Bitmax or whatever it's called and like put your movie on the internet, and you could do it yourself and recoup all the money. You're not even giving away a distributor fee. Like, go do that. But there's so many movies that aren't available because they're not on a streamer because no one made them an offer. It's like, just go direct to consumer. Come on. So I see us doing that, but not as a streaming product or a subscription product.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think just to tie a bow on financing, there's really nothing out of the ordinary in what you're doing. You're still putting together a finance plan that's made up of multiple different sources. The difference is that you're putting equity or private investment first in the thought process rather than using it to fill a gap at the end. The final question we had in this section was around government funding bodies for finance. What are your thoughts on using them if they are available? My group of filmmakers is currently producing an independent project, but we don't want to engage with funding bodies because they take so long to get back to you, usually say no or take years to actually fund a show. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Interesting. It may be a different approach in Australia than we use in the States. Like usually the tax incentives, for example, and we don't really have government funding bodies in the US. There's not like a government fund or a state fund that you can go to and they say, we have $20 million to start or to be the first money in on projects. It's very standard for those to be kind of last money in. And what you have to do, at least in Utah and the other states that I'm aware of, is you have to prove that you have the money to make the movie before they'll actually approve you for a tax incentive program. So they're not just going to give you a government-backed document that you can take to a lender and go fund your movie with no equity. You have to show that you've brought the equity to the table first. So I don't really have experience with that. My gut is telling me to go back to the conversation around supply and demand. If you're in Canada, if you're in Australia, if you're in some of these countries that have these programs, what's in it for them? What are they trying to get out of it? And a lot of times it's marketing. They're treating it as a marketing expense. They're saying, come and spend your money here. The city planner here in Provo, I had lunch with him a month or two ago, and he's like, we did our own internal study, and of all the places we can spend money, the best return on a dollar is with film. It was like $2.50 back for every dollar that they spent or invested in indie film. So if they're discounting price on hotels or giving you a grant or helping you with a film festival or whatever it is, with the tax revenue, with all the other ways that they get revenue, they're getting back 2.5 to 1, 2.5x to 1, which is an awesome number. I don't know if it's exclusive to Provo, Utah, or if it's across the board, but if that's the case, that means they want to spend the money because not only are they going to have an asset that has their name on it and builds awareness, but they're also going to get a financial return from it. You're in a really high leveraged position if you can, have that mindset of like, I'm bringing an opportunity to the table instead of I'm showing up with my hands outstretched begging for cash, and understanding what it is they want. The same with anything. If you're trying to get someone to say yes to you, you've got to put a compelling offer together. And so I would look at what is the project, how does it align with the demand and the progress that government funding body wants to make, and then presenting it as an opportunity that they can't say no to because it aligns so perfectly with what they want.
Yeah. I mean, the key question of any source of finance is what's in it for them, right?
Yeah. Yeah. If you just live in your own reality and what's in it for me, you're missing out on like 90% of what makes the world go around. So it's really about shifting perspective and trying to see things from the other side. I think I may have talked about this last time, but like if you go into a pitch meeting with an investor and you pitch them a creative project, which is all about you, here's the movie I want to make. I'm really passionate about this story. I'm excited to shoot on this camera in these locations with these actors. It's going to be the most amazing time I've ever had in my entire career. You didn't say you once. It was all about I and me and us. And they're like, great, so I'm going to give you a bunch of money to have the time of your life. How do I benefit? What's in it for me? But if you go into a pitch meeting and say, I know exactly what you want, and here's how I'm going to help you get it by making a film, now they're going to listen because you're at least talking about it from their side of things. So yeah, shifting that perspective is like one of the very first things that you should start working on doing.
On the flip side, we've had a few questions about what's in it for you if someone comes to you with a script. Are you looking just at scripts when you're choosing projects for the fund, or are you looking at more of a package where you'd want a director or a producer already attached?
I've looked at all of the above. I'm not looking for finished projects, and I'm not looking for projects that are looking for finishing funds or last money in. Our model is really built around owning the projects. We would acquire the asset, the script, the idea, the concept, whatever, and we would then pay those people to write the script or direct the script or act in the movie so that we own it. That ownership, I think, is really important, not just for me and my fund model, but for all indie producers. Like I think we give all the ownership away too easily. We give away the upside and then we wonder why we're not making any money on our movies. And so, yeah, I'm not actively looking. I have enough scripts and projects in the queue to like fill the first fund. What I'm always interested in are relationships and cool stories. And so the answer is, if you listen to this and you like me and you're like, I really want to talk to him about the fund model, it's not shoot me a message on DM or shoot me an email with the synopsis of your movie, which is 20 paragraphs long and is going to be homework to read and I don't know who you are. That's not a good approach to reaching out to producers or investors. So start a relationship, leave a comment on something, come to one of my free monthly filmmaker live calls, like spend time where I'm spending time, go to where people are. I spend time on LinkedIn, on my newsletter, and on my podcast and on my live calls. So there's 4 places you can show up for free and start building a relationship. Yes, it takes longer. Sorry, but not sorry. You're going to form a cool relationship. I've met dozens of cool filmmakers and investors and executives over the last year because I just showed up every day. And the people that resonated with what I was talking about and are doing cool stuff, it's really easy at that point to say, hey, I'm talking about this. You're talking about this. We should have a conversation. Great. I do like 5 of those a week where I'm meeting people on LinkedIn and they go, can we have a chat? And I go, yeah, I would love to have a chat. But the people who don't get to call on a call with me one-on-one are the people who say, please produce my movie and give me all the money. I'm not an ATM. I don't know you. So build a relationship first and then start talking about your project and see if there's any interest there.
Little side question for you. Do you ever just get exhausted? Do you ever feel I never want to send another LinkedIn DM again?
No, because, and this goes back to the idea of your mindset first, is if you have a big enough thing, call it a goal, call it a project. I like the idea of projects. Like to me, the Producer Fund 1 is a project. It's not a career. It's not a life. It's a project. It's like, oh, this is what I'm going to work on until I get it to work. Years ago, when I was like 8 years old, I would, get a device. I'd get an old phone and I would sit there and take it apart and unscrew it and see how the wires connected and see what pieces of it made it work. And I love the architect brain of like, how does this work? How do I connect these things and make it so that this happens at the end? That systems thinking, architectural brain kind of stuff. That's what drives me. I get my needs met every day. I get to like have a really satisfying puzzle in front of me every single day. Some people like Sudoku. I like movie funds, like it's kind of the same emotional trigger that I'm scratching every day. So no, I don't get tired. I mean, I get physically tired if I work too much or do too many days or too many hours, but I never lose the fire of can't wait to get up and do the next thing because it's not done yet. Like I do have a sense of, okay, that's done. Now what's next? So, we finished Faith of Angels, our last movie, and it was like, cool. What's next? Well, I don't want to do the same thing again. So what am I going to do differently? Oh, I'm going to start a fund. That's different. That's new. That's a problem I can figure out, and that'll keep me busy for a few years. Great. That sounds fun. So it's that.
And in terms of what's working and what's not on a daily basis or a monthly basis, are you tracking stats or keeping across data of how many reach outs you're doing or what you sent in that email and what seems to work as a, pitch, whatever it might be? Or is that just all filtering in your brain without any deliberate, data analysis?
Yeah, definitely like deliberate data analysis is a big part of it. You have to have a tracking sheet. You need to know what your inputs are so you can track the outputs against it, right? So I do have a spreadsheet that's got, 478 investors or organizations on it that I have either reached out to or am in the process of reaching out to. And I know who I've had pitches with and who I've sent materials to and who's committed and who's gotten a single outreach and who hasn't had an email yet and who's come to what events. So I have that level of granularity. I'm not tracking what I said in each email or anything, but I definitely, let's go back to Daniel Priestley again. They also talk about the idea of a perfect repeatable week, which is if you have outcomes that need to happen every week, typically around sales or around growth of your business, but you can think about it in the same way, like, and getting an investor to give you money for your movie, you had a sale. Like you made an offer and they accepted it. So that's a sale, right? It's a transaction. So what's a perfect repeatable week? Well, if I need to raise $10 million and the average check size is $500,000, then I need 20 investors, right? Okay, well, how do I get 20 investors? How many? You just reverse engineer from there. So I need 20 $500,000 checks. Okay, how many people do I have to have a pitch meeting with to get one check? And if the answer is 20, then okay, like that's a 5% conversion rate, which is fairly low for like in person or like over the phone sales. Maybe you're at a 10 or 20% conversion rate, but let's use 5 conservatively. Okay, so I got to talk to 20 people to get one, and I need 20. So 20 times 20, if I'm doing my math right, is 400 people. Notice how many people I said on my spreadsheet. Like I'm at 478. So I need to talk to more than 400 people. Maybe it's 500, maybe it's 1,000. I put my number at 1,000, and Dan Priestley talks about this too. Entrepreneurship is the journey of 1,000 pitches. And he literally has said, and him and Glenn and all the people at Dent have said, by the end of 1,000 pitches, you'll either have nothing or you'll have $10 million. So I'm hoping that plays out perfectly in my favor. And I'm very excited to send Dan a text on WhatsApp and say, hey, man, I just hit my 750th pitch and I just crossed $10 million. It's truly a journey of 1,000 pitches.
Yeah, and there's the time and relationship building factor as well. Like you have these 478 people, and at the moment you have $1 million, but a year ago you had $0. And I can imagine that would only compound over time, and the next million won't take as long, and the next million after that hopefully won't take as long as that one.
Yeah. And who knows, I may only need 5 people or 10 investors. You just don't know until you have it. So I think giving yourself a goal and saying, oh, I'm going to do 10x that or whatever, I think that's the right approach. Like I set out at the beginning of the year of, it's a journey of 1,000 pitches. So do I want to do 1,000 pitches this month? That's pretty unrealistic. I don't have a network that I could do that. But the network I've built is growing to the point where now any city I go to, I can have 10 people at around a lunch table with me and I can do 10 pitches at once. So there's leverage. I'm going back to New York next month and I'm going to take 20 to 30 meetings in 3 days. I wouldn't have been able to do that a year ago because I didn't have that network or connection to that network, which I now do. And so when you're compressing the timeline, I think the momentum starts building and it kind of has that more of an exponential curve. Whereas so far it's been like 10,000 here, 20,000 there, 30,000 there, 20,000 there. Oh, here's a big check. Great. Okay, that was an outlier, but how did that happen? What did I do in order to get that big check? And then can I replicate that? Can I do it again and again and again? So I even tweaked kind of how I'm structuring the fund. Instead of raising money for 10 movies and then investing in movies, it's like, no, every million unlocks a movie because we need to go. We need to make movies, not just raise money. 4 months from now, I'm closing the first fund. And if we're at $3.5 million, we'll make 3 movies. If we're at $7.2 million, we'll make 7 movies. And now the investors know that there's a ticking clock. By March 31st, fund closes. April 1st, you can't invest in fund 1. You can invest in an individual movie, but not in the fund. And so that has helped the momentum build because now I can point to time's running out, folks. So I'm going to do everything I can. Like I've got a goal of reaching out to 200 people this month. It's the second and I've talked to 12. So it's like, okay, I got to probably speed it up a little bit, but I'm going to be taking meetings and doing in-person stuff, and that's great. So I think having those milestones and deadlines can help, but they have to be real. They can't just be arbitrary. I did that first. I said, I'm going to close it January 15th of 2026. And that was a made up number. Like it wasn't true. And now I've made it March 31st because by the time we're in pre-production on the movie, the financial risk profile changes and it's not fair to the earlier investors to bring in more people. So now I have a real date and a real reason.
Do you see any potential for a collective of producers with films in the same genre raising money this way? Could they hire a fund manager rather than the other way around?
I'm sure they could. I've never thought about it. I mean, in a sense, that's what I'm doing. It's the other way around, though. It's not producers saying, let's band together and then go find a fund manager or create a fund. That's more of like a slate model, I think. But yeah, I mean, I'm thinking of, is that something that I could see happening for myself? And like, yeah, a year or 2 from now, if I've done 3, 5, 10, whatever movies, and 6 producers came and they have really good projects and they said, look, we want to make all these projects. We need you to use your skill set and your network to raise the money and do another fund. I'd probably consider that. It's a cool idea, but I don't think I would court that from my side because I like finding and discovering the people and the projects and the stories. And if that was already done, it would be like less interesting to me. If they're like, we have 10 stories that we want you to fund, I'd be like, oh, I want to find the stories. So I don't think I would say yes because of that reason. But if they were 10 really good stories that I felt compelled to make, I'd be like, okay, let me at least read it. But I'd want some say and some ability to develop and to form relationships with the filmmakers and the stories and make them partly mine.
Are you finding that a hurdle on the other side when you're going and pitching, that you only have one film locked in? Are you finding that distributors, exhibitors the people who are going to have to then go and sell the film to audiences are going, I don't know what the creative is, therefore I'm not going to invest yet, or I'm not going to sign my name to this fund yet?
Yeah, I get some pushback from people saying, well, you need a name, or let's see how this first one goes. And I expected that. But the thing is, you'll never get a yes if you don't ask. And so I'm having conversations. I've had 3 conversations in the last 2 days with distributors and production companies for about that very topic. I'm coming into the marketplace as a supplier of these types of films. I'm going to do 3 a year. That's the plan. If you want to be the one has the output deal with me, if you want to give me an output deal, that's what I'm working towards. And I'm giving you the opportunity to be really early. And if it's a no, it's like, okay, fine. Like, I'm not offended by that. It makes sense in their world, in their marketplace, in their worldview to say no right now, because this movie doesn't have big names that they can sell internationally. Okay, fine. But you know what does sell internationally? A movie that made $4 or $6 or $10 million in theaters. So at some point, the leverage shifts back into my favor to where I go, oh, well, you and 6 other people are calling me. So how about we do 20% instead of 30, or 15% instead of 20? Or how about we do 2 years instead of 7 years? Now the leverage is my side and I can make better deals. So like, worst case scenario, I make a better deal a year from now than I can today. That's not a bad deal at all. So I think, yes, right now it's hard. I can at least get the meetings though. So that's been helpful, like my profile and the partnerships I have, and like I have a law firm that can help me with outreach, and I have a network of people that can connect me to other investors and distributors and partners. Okay, so getting the meetings is not the hard part now. The hard part is finding who's going to catch the vision at this early stage and go, yeah, we'll try it. We want the risk of being wrong in exchange for the upside of being right and being the partner you have for the next however many years and however many films.
What for you has been the hardest part of all of this in the past year, or what is still the biggest challenge you feel like you're facing?
I think it's the same as everybody, which is it's not happening as fast as I would like. I had a kickoff event in January of this year, 2025. I had 65 investors in the room. They were tech investors, film people, et cetera, people that have funds, people that are angel investors, everything. And I fully expected to get at least the first $1 million committed from that event. And I got about $60,000 or $70,000 committed from that event, which, it's still 60 or 70 grand. Like, that was the first time that I pitched it publicly in a group of people with the intent to raise money. And so I was like, well, am I going to be upset because I set some arbitrary $1 million threshold and I only got 6% of it? No, that's silly. That's arbitrary. Like, why would I get upset about that? It's a lesson I'm learning. Okay, 65 people equals 60, 70 grand. Well, great. If each person is worth $1,000, then great. That's a start. There's a version of this fund where I go and raise it from 250 investors instead of 20. And they're putting in $100,000 average check instead of $1 million. I don't know. Who knows how it's going to play out, but you can only find out if you go and try. So the hard part for me is where I'm setting an unrealistic or unfounded goal or arbitrary goal or timeline, and then I go past it and it hasn't happened and I get upset. But that's all self-inflicted and it can be easily solved by just a little bit of therapy, I think. So like I just go, okay, well, that I shouldn't have set that milestone or shouldn't have set that timeline so high, or maybe I didn't try hard enough. And what can I learn from this? And how can I go about it differently the next week or the next month or the next year, however long it takes?
It's such an amazing example of tenacity. And I think for a lot of people, the risk would be too high, or the uncertainty of going, well, this first thing failed. So how do I know that the next year of my life is not going to result in failure? How do you stay the course, or how do you have such belief in where this is going that it will succeed in the end?
My buddy Carl Richards released an episode of his podcast, Behavior Gap Radio, and he talked about being a manager of uncertainty. And like, that's the role, that's the job. And I really resonated with that because that's what people are hiring me for. Everything in this industry is uncertain. There's no guarantees at all. You can do your best to line everything up perfectly and properly and dot all the T's and cross all the I's. But there's still that risk of what if something happens that you didn't plan for. Carl also talks about how risk is what's left over after you plan for everything else. And so taking on the identity of a manager of uncertainty means that I've got to be really comfortable with uncertainty. And so I don't know where that came from or if I've done anything specific over the years to be okay with that, but it's definitely a requirement if you're going to try to do what I'm doing. And believe me, I will help you. Like, I'm writing books and podcasts and blog posts and going on podcasts all the time talking about this stuff. I'm not saying you got to go figure it out yourself. That's what I had to do, and I hated it. So I'm trying to make it so people don't have to figure it out themselves. They at least have a starting point. So, go get my book. There's a free link in the show notes, right? But I'm trying to think if I did anything tangible or hyper-focused where I was like, I'm going to get better at uncertainty. But I think it was just a reframe of there are things that are in my control. There are things out of my control. I'm going to focus on the stuff that's in my control, and the stuff that's out of my control, I'm going to be really quick at solving and responding, but I'm not going to get upset and I'm not going to get down and I'm not going to be depressed because something outside of my control happened and it just derailed what I was working on, because that's wasted energy. So I think there's a lot of mindset work around what are you focusing on, because what you focus on is what you feel. And if you're feeling uncertain, you're probably focused too much on things that are out of your control. But I think it's an identity piece. I think it comes down to who am I and how do where's my place in the world? What do I do? How do I interact? What choices do I make? And what am I focused on? And all those things play into your identity to where you can say, I'm a person that's zero stress. Like, you'll never see me lose it on a set. I'll never yell at somebody or get into a funk or kick something or throw something or anything like that. Like, that's not who I am. It's out of alignment with my identity. So it's not in the realm of possibility. So I think it's doing some of that work.
And you don't have to answer this one, but do you have an out? Like, is there a point where you will stop if things aren't working or you don't hit a certain number or something doesn't work?
Not anymore. I think I had the original conversation I had with my wife around raising money was I need 3 months. This was November of last year, so 13 months ago. I said, we had just released these 2 movies in theaters. What am I going to do next? I want to raise this fund. It's a $10 million fund. I don't know how to do it, but I'm going to figure it out. Can I have 3 months to at least get to the first thing? And that was the end of January, and I had that event. And that's, I think, why I was pretty down. It was because that was the end of my 3 months, and I raised 60, 70 grand. Like, that's not enough to do anything. I can't pay myself off of that because I'm only taking a 2% management fee. That's not enough. So that became 5 months and 6 months and 8 months. The first $1 million came through the bank account on October 31st of this year. So basically 12 months of uncertainty and going, I don't know when or how or what. I'm just going to keep going and keep optimizing and keep, figuring it out. And we crossed that first milestone, and it was a huge sigh of relief of like, okay, this model works. We're greenlighting the first movie. That's going to cause momentum. It's going to go. I can pay myself. Like, all those things happened in that moment. But I think I probably in the back of my mind was like, I can't keep doing this to my wife for longer than 2025. So if I got 2 months further down the track, we're recording this December 2nd. If I had gotten to the end of the year and had not crossed $1 million, I probably would have said, okay, I'm going to pause. I'm going to keep building my personal brand and my network, but I'm going to do that in the background as I go and produce another movie for another person. I'm going to get paid to be a producer on 1 or 2 movies this year, make 100, 150 grand, and then I'll try again next year. Like, that's where my mind was at. In the very, 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 very background of my mind. It was not a conscious daily thought of like, if I don't get the money today, I'm quitting in 2 months. Like, it wasn't that. But I think that in the back of my mind, I was like, she gave me 3 months and I took 12. That's not very fair in a partnership. And obviously communicated throughout, like, oh, I'm going to do some consulting this month and bring in a few $1,000s and we're fine. And that bought me another 2 months of time or something like that. But yeah, I think there was a bit of a backup plan, so to speak, an out, but not now. I mean, we've got a movie in production. If that's the only movie we do through Producer Fund 1, fine. Then I'll start raising Producer Fund 2 on April 1st and we'll go.
Congratulations. What a year. And it must feel amazing to look back and see how much you've built objectively in just 12 months.
Yeah, there's my need for therapy showing up again, because $1 million doesn't feel like that much. But the movie that we've greenlit and the people that are enrolling in the process and already engaging with coming on as production partners, finance partners, collaborators in all these different ways, there's a lot of impact that's already happening because of this movie, because of this story, that I'm very excited about. So even if, like I said, if that's the only one we do, I think it's a successful endeavor, and I'll go right into raising the next round, the next fund, and we'll keep going from there.
So great to have you back, Daren. All the best with the project. I'm going to put a bunch of links in the show notes so that people can follow Brotherhood and follow you personally on LinkedIn and keep track of what you're doing. But it would be great to have you back towards the end of next year and see where you're at and what's happened from now.
Can't wait. I would happily come back. Thanks for having me on again.
We Interrupt This broadcast is recorded on the unceded lands of the Bunurong people of the Kulin Nation and the Kaurna people of the Adelaide Plains, and we acknowledge them as the traditional custodians and first storytellers of these regions. Always was, always will be.